When Joe Montana stepped onto the football field, it was with the unshakable belief that no game was ever beyond his grasp.
Everything hangs in the balance now. The season, the outcome of the Super Bowl berth hangs in the balance.
Joe Montana never expected to lose. He expected to win every game that he played.
Has the ball. Montana rolling out the right, looking toward the end zone, throwing under pressure, throws his pass, caught by Clark. Clark got him, touchdown. Right, Clark.
This guy, especially in those pressure situations, was just unbelievable. You've got to stop Joe on the first drive. You've got to stop Joe on the last drive.
So there's 2 seconds left, and Montana will get one throw. Here's Montana throwing for the end zone. Right place, he got it! Touchdown, 49ers!
He never had fear, and I think that was the exciting thing for me being around him, is that he didn't have fear. I think that he's always had that ability to believe that if I just have enough time, I can get it done.
He's got this kind of a golden touch and this aura around him that everybody who can kind of go along for the ride gets a fantastic one.
It's just his enthusiasm and joy and boy-like attitude towards the game of football. Let's go out and play, guys. Here's the ball. You guys have your helmets, your equipment, and all the things you need. Let's go out and play.
Montana just knows where everybody's going to be before they get there, and he's like about 4 or 5 frames ahead of what you're seeing.
Oh, he was very competitive. That drive inside him, you know, when he took the football field, he felt it was up to him to help the team to win.
39 seconds remaining. Back to throw Montana. Stepped up, throws. Touchdown!
The other thing that drove him was he loves to prove people wrong. When they counted him out, it was tremendous motivation for him to come back.
The drama of Joe Montana's legend was made even richer by the adversity he faced, then overcame. And beneath the icy calm of Joe Cool lay the spark that ignited greatness. This is Joe Montana, the fire inside. Despite the pleas of the faithful, in 1995, Joe Montana bid farewell to the game he loved.
I really and truly never thought that this day would ever come where I would saying that word retirement, but unfortunately it's here.
You know, the NFL was larger than life, and it was a far dream at 8 years old, but all of a sudden it became a reality, and through my career, it stayed pretty much a dream. There are times that you laugh and times that you cry, and either way, there's a special meaning behind it and a special memory.
In the 80s, the entire Bay Area was transformed into a magical kingdom. We called it Camelot. Sir Lancelot would go out every weekend, and he would face the foe and he would slay the dragon, oftentimes with only 2 minutes left on the clock.
He made it look easier, and he did it cool. I mean, other guys go, you know, stuff coming out there, looking out their ear hole. He just slide it out there. And then where'd that come from?
To answer the question, where did that come from? We have to look back 30 seasons. Back to a young boy growing up in Monongahela, Pennsylvania.
It just was like a flashback. I could see him as a little kid coming off the field the first time with that uniform that was too big for him.
The lessons learned as a boy would be refined and repeated for those next 30 seasons. It was a road he traveled first with his father.
Well, I think the biggest thing that my father did for me was to teach me not to quit. And I think if he had let me go the route that I would have liked, I wouldn't be sitting here today. But he knew what it took to become a winner. And I think so. It started young, hating to lose, and I just carried on.
Inspired by his father, no one could hold back Joe's desire to play football.
A couple of times they snuck a uniform on him and put him into the games. He was a year younger than everybody else who was on the field. I don't know what would happen if they'd never gotten caught at the time, but he did. But he was so excited when he'd come off after the game. He'd say, I got to play today, Mom, I got to play.
So he was eight years old, and he's down there trying to play linebacker and hitting some of these kids, bigger kids. I mean, he was doing a really good job at linebacker, but we always wanted him to be a quarterback. He could always throw the football. When he was 10, 11 years old, 12 years old, he could throw the ball 55 yards in the air.
He had the ability, but he also had the ability from the neck up, which I thought helped carry him a great way, because there's one thing, the guy always made the right decisions.
Despite his ability, Joe didn't gain the starting quarterback position at Ringgold High School until midway through his junior year. But when he did, he had a stunning debut against the area's powerhouse.
And the game ended in a 34-34 tie. But in order for us to come back, Joe had to throw 4 touchdown passes plus a 2-point conversion, which he did that night. And I think that was the very start of his comebacks.
Joe would just get up there, and he would know where that man was, and he'd throw it right, and every time, 98% of the time, the guy would catch it on a dead run, which would give him ability to continue, run away, and score. He was a magician on the field.
Joe was Joe. He didn't put on any airs about being anybody but himself. I mean, he didn't come out and say, "Come on, now we're going to score." That was not his style. I mean, you knew as a young man and his teammates that he was that good. He was different than everybody else.
Stay tuned. Film session now. Back to more.
Joe Montana's blue-collar success in Western Pennsylvania forged golden dreams of Notre Dame.
There was just this aura around that I had felt nowhere else, and I knew from that minute that this is where I wanted to be. And you know, you go into the stadium and you think of all the ghosts who were there, the tradition, and being a part of that meant a lot to me.
But Joe's golden dreams faded as he faced the adversity of competition at a major university.
I was in shock when I got there, to be truthful. Coming out of high school, you know, think you're pretty hot stuff, and all of a sudden I get to Notre Dame and there were like, I think there were 7 freshman quarterbacks at the time, and a total of about 11 or 12 total on the roster, and you sit there and you go, why did I do this?
To overcome the challenge, Joe transformed himself into Notre Dame's patron saint of lost causes.
And I thought, what do they want, a miracle from this kid? 6 minutes and 2 touchdowns, there's no way. He hasn't practiced, he hasn't even warmed up, and now they're putting him in.
The most frustrating part about all that is, you know, Joe would come, we would come back, win the ball game, show up Monday for practice, and there he is again, you know, second or third team quarterback. And I think a lot of the players even started to question, you know, how can they do that to Joe?
Finally, in his junior year, with the Irish trailing Purdue in the second half, Joe Montana came off the bench for the last time. Following that stunning victory, Notre Dame went undefeated for the rest of the season. At the Cotton Bowl, they faced both undefeated Texas and the opportunity to win the national championship.
It was his football team, and it was his leadership, and it didn't make a difference to him who scored the points and who made the yardage as long as we won the national championship. And we did, and we deserved it.
Always one to save the best for last, Joe's greatest college comeback was in his final game for Notre Dame. Facing a field of ice and a howling wind of minus 30 degrees, the Irish squandered an early lead. Montana went down with hypothermia, and as the team doctors fed him chicken soup in the locker room to raise his body temperature, the situation on the field became desperate.
We got to get that kid back out on the field because that's our only hope for victory. But finally, when there was 7.5 minutes to go, there wasn't any time left to wait. Time was to do it now.
Down 34-12, Montana mounted a final flurry of touchdowns. And with only 2 seconds left on the clock, his golden dream as a boy became part of Notre Dame's mythology.
Greatest comeback in Notre Dame history. Now that took in a lot of games.
Stay tuned. Now, back to...
The San Francisco 49ers had been drifting off course before Bill Walsh was named head coach in 1979. Walsh's master plan to engineer smooth sailing at Candlestick Park included third-round draft choice Joe Montana, whose career at Notre Dame had been spectacular but sporadic.
He just wasn't considered a top prospect, primarily because he didn't play as much as people thought he should at Notre Dame. We were told he was somewhat inconsistent. We were told he didn't have a very strong arm.
I didn't have those Heisman Trophy type numbers, and they put so much emphasis on size and arm strength and those things that sometimes don't really make the player. And so they were also telling me I was too small coming out of college, so I was too light. So I had all those things going against me.
When he arrived, a lot of the other athletes weren't sure what position this guy played.
He had a Fu Manchu, blonde hair, and I think, well, maybe he's a kicker. He's skinny, a little scrawny. So when he said, "Hi, I'm Joe Montana," you know, I'm sure my mouth dropped open because I'd seen this guy beat us in college, and I'd heard all about him. And, you know, I couldn't believe that this was the same guy that performed all those magic tricks on the field.
He wasn't a great player at Notre Dame just by passing through town. His greatness shows up. It showed up there, and it showed up since he probably first put on a male supporter.
1980 saw Montana begin to conjure up his fabled magic, as Walsh gradually worked him into a starting role.
I would place Joe in the game when I felt that he could be very successful. I can remember a game against the New York Jets. I can't believe Joe played more than 12 or 14 plays the whole game, but I think he threw 3 touchdown passes and ran for 1. And so that was all orchestrated. So Joe would have a most positive feeling about himself when he went into these tough NFL games as a starter.
I think in the long run that helped me because you can look back on a lot of players who were just shoved right in from day one, and it was just too much to grasp. A dream coming true and then all these things being thrown at you.
Yeah, and our deep over patterns would be ones that we use. And just alert Charlie.
But once he was on the field, he was just outstanding in his ability to absorb what was being coached.
I wanted to play the game as more of a chess game, and one move's going to lead to another, and you're not always going to get the king immediately. 4-yard here, 5-yard there, 10-yard here is as wearing, if not more, on a defense than 170-yard touchdown. And that was more my style than anything. Those are the things I worked on from day one.
During his 14 seasons with San Francisco, Montana produced 5 NFC passing titles. While he excelled primarily by calling for short passes, he also wore out defenses with long-distance dialing.
Back to throw Montana. Out in front is Rice. He is there. He's got it. He's at the 40. It'll be a touchdown for the 49ers. 96 yards.
Montana was the orchestrator of the finely tuned 49er offense.
Joe, when he was out there, it was really like he was conducting a symphony. You know, things were smooth, things were precise, things just seemed to flow.
Montana attained perfect pitch by drawing on a vast repertoire of quarterbacking skills.
The way he plays the game is almost aesthetic, artistic, almost sensual from the standpoint of he's just so quick and nimble and able to avoid and maneuver.
Montana going to throw. Rolls out. In trouble, slips, falls, lobs it to Craig. Touchdown 49ers. What a play by Montana.
The position of quarterback is not as easy as Joe Montana made it look. He was phenomenally accurate. You could have a defensive back over this shoulder, and he would put the ball right in the only possible place where the receiver could catch it and the defensive back could not touch it.
He could also drill the ball in there, and his motion was so precise. You know, it was just like the ball was coming to you in slow motion.
Montana ranks among the top 5 in NFL history in pass completions, passing yardage, and touchdown passes.
Montana was so good at seeing the receiver when he was going to break open. He was so good at reading defenses, and I assume that the reason he was that was because he was so aware of the entire field and so aware of where his players were going to be.
There's quarterbacks with better arms than Joe. That's easy. There's quarterbacks with, I guess, better stats than Joe. But I'd take Joe in any situation, anytime, anywhere. He'll do nothing but win and make somebody look bad.
the thing that made Joe Montana such a great player. It's just his enthusiasm and joy and boy-like attitude towards the game of football. Let's go out and play, guys. Here's a ball. You guys have your helmets and your equipment, all the things you need. Let's go out and play.
Stay tuned. Film session returns after the now.
He can play in any condition, any circumstance, like he's still in Pennsylvania on the high school football field. He plays with a smile on his face. He's able to play in the most difficult situations, totally relaxed, almost placid. It was so relaxed. Most of the time with Joe and I could tease him during the game itself, and he could tease me back. I could say, how's it going out there? And he'd just been sacked 3 times. He'd say, if somebody would just call the right play, I'd be okay.
Very calm on the football field. You know, you wouldn't think this guy had so much emotion inside him, but he was very competitive.
Terrible. And that is not going to happen to this ball club. I ain't bullshit. We've opened the door. We're going to go through it next week, and we're going to kick ass and take no prisoners the week after.
His competitiveness is just such a fire. I think that he became such a great master of the comeback because he just never expected to lose.
In 1980, the 49ers faced a 28-point halftime deficit against the Saints.
Montana back to throw. Big rush put on. He throws. He completes it underneath to Dwight Clark. He's the 40, the 45. He's the 50. He goes to the 40. It's a foot race.
It was here that Montana began his legend as the NFL's cool master of the incredible comeback.
Touchdown, 49ers. Back to throw Montana. He's being rushed. Look out. He throws. He has Solomon open at the 5. Breaks the tackle. Goes the outside. Touchdown, 49ers.
We won 38-35, which was an NFL record. But more importantly, in that particular game, Joe demonstrated his ability to handle the most adverse situation you can in sports, and that's being desperately behind and maintaining your poise.
Montana directed 30 fourth-quarter comebacks during his 16 NFL seasons.
3rd down. Montana to throw. Throws long for Rice down the sideline. He's gone to 30, the 20, the 10. Touchdown, 49ers. A 77-yard touchdown pass to Jerry Rice. So there's 2 seconds left. The 49ers will have a chance to throw one. And Montana will get one throw. Taylor and Clark and Wilson go to the far side, right to the near side. Here's Montana throwing for the end zone. Rice late, he's got it! Touchdown, 49ers!
As the game got closer and as most people would tighten up, Joe kind of relished that moment, and I think that he's always had that ability to believe that if I just have enough time, I can get it done.
The unforgettable finish of the 1981 NFC Championship still remains a lasting symbol of Montana's stature as a peerless performer in pressure-packed situations.
So fasten your seatbelts now. We've got turbulence and plenty of it here at Candlestick Park now. Everything hangs in the balance now. The season, the outcome of a Super Bowl berth hangs in the balance. Montana rolling out the right, looking toward the end zone, throwing under pressure, throws his pass, caught by Clark. Clark got a touchdown. Dwight Clark has it. It's a touchdown for the 49ers.
He threw the ball. He gets knocked to the ground. There's the roar of the crowd, and it was either Harvey Martin or Too Tall, or one of those guys said, "You've just beaten America's team." And Joe said, well, you can sit at home with the rest of America and watch the Super Bowl. He was fired up that day, and he wanted it probably to prove everybody wrong, everybody that didn't draft him in the first 2 rounds, and his coaches at Notre Dame, and to show everybody that he was a hell of a player.
No matter what the situation was, he could execute under that tremendous pressure. But more importantly than anything else, he has a natural intuition or instinct for competition. Then you add to that a great supporting cast and a system of football that was ideally suited for him, and you have very likely the greatest quarterback of all time.
In January 1982, Joe Montana earned his first Super Bowl MVP award.
Here's Montana throwing toward the end zone, caught on the run by Cooper. He's got it. He's into the end zone. A 49er touchdown.
3 years later, the 49ers were again world champions. Success came easy for Joe Montana, or so it seemed. fact is, the 49ers did not always go to the Super Bowl. And throughout his career, Joe Montana faced problems far more serious than a few dropped passes. In September 1986, a ruptured disc threatened to end his career.
I remember I was with Dwight Clark, and Dwight and I were walking out of the hospital after we saw him from the surgery that he had on his back. And we were both devastated because we thought this guy would never play again.
I was really sure that he couldn't return that year, maybe another year, maybe never. And within a couple of weeks following the surgery, the reports were Joe was up and around, even playing catch, doing things that no one could do after that kind of surgery. And finally he returned, this was about 8 weeks, and played better than ever. It was hard to believe.
Going deep, he's throwing to the goal line to Rice. He leaps, he catches it. Touchdown, 49ers!
On the day he returned, Montana led the 49ers to victory with 3 touchdown passes. But in the playoffs, he suffered a cruel twist of fate when the New York Giants put him where he had spent much of the season, on his back.
Well, when Joe was hitting that playoff game with the Giants, I really became sick to my stomach, because he was hit blindside without anybody touching him right down the middle. But it happens to quarterbacks. A lot of them are never the same. A lot of them never really recover. But in Joe's case, the next time he played football, it was the same Joe. He could overcome injuries and deal with them better than any athlete I've met.
In 1987, Montana threw a career-high 31 touchdown passes and led the 49ers to the league's best record. However, once again, his professional life took a turn for the worse.
Montana to throw, steps back, throws, intercepted. Holy mackerel.
After Montana's poor playoff performance and the 49ers' shocking defeat, head coach Bill Walsh began to have second thoughts about who should be his first-string quarterback.
Young, back to throw. In trouble, he's going to be sacked. No, gets away.
This was the time when Steve Young began to emerge as a football player. There became somewhat of a controversy here and there with Joe and Steve. Joe's injuries curtailing his play, and then when Steve would get a chance to play, he'd be brilliant. There were those who felt that Steve Young was the quarterback of the future. There were others who felt naturally that Joe Montana was the greatest player in the league. But we knew this, that there would be people taking both sides, no question about it. And it was tough.
Joe never went in year after year thinking, okay, I've got this job, because if it wasn't, it was his back, and then it was trade rumors, and then they brought Steve in. So he was pretty well prepared, and I think he learned to fight on it from his mom and dad.
I think the adversity only makes him work that much harder to be better. It's just like an adrenaline shot, you know, getting something to make him say, well, now they think I'm done. I'm not done. I'm going to go out there and show them that I'm still able to play, that I'm still able to do it.
Montana responded by leading the 49ers back to the Super Bowl and directing a game-winning drive that may have been his finest hour.
39 seconds remaining. Back to throw, Montana. Steps up, throws. Touchdown, 49ers!
1 year later, Montana dismantled the Denver Broncos in Super Bowl 24. With back-to-back Super Bowl victories, Montana and the 49ers were on the threshold of NFL history.
We're not even satisfied. We want to get 3. That's right. We want to get 3 more. See you in town. What do you call it? Three-peat. Three-peat. Go for the 3-peat.
On a day when America's thoughts were on a Mideast desert, an epic battle was waged at Candlestick Park.
Montana throws down the left sideline. It is caught by Taylor.
Joe Montana's strike to John Taylor was the only touchdown of a game that turned into a war of attrition. On this day, the Giants were stronger, as they destroyed the 49ers' hope of a three-peat and dealt Joe Montana a knockout blow.
Running out, he's in trouble. May run, looks back, looking for someone.
They got him back at the 15-yard line.
ribs and chest hurt so bad that I didn't know my hand was broken. Normally when you get the wind knocked out of you, you can usually breathe a little bit of air out. But I couldn't even get a breath out. And I was thinking, oh God, I'm gonna die here, I know it. Something is seriously wrong.
I wanted him to quit, and I think his father did too, and so did Jennifer, but Joe said no. He said, I have to try to come back.
I didn't want to finish my career in the hospital somewhere and say, oh, that's it, without ever giving that effort to go back, because I would have missed the game if I had to leave on those terms.
This time, the comeback was different. Montana sat out nearly 2 seasons. He returned as a backup, and while he stirred up memories of the past, the 49ers were now committed to the future.
Montana to throw, across the middle, Brent Jones, touchdown 49ers.
I really didn't want to leave San Francisco, but the circumstances being the way they were, for me to be able to play again, I realized that the best thing for me to do would be to leave.
I'm sure just like all of those who read about Camelot felt very sorry when it all fell apart, you had the feeling that what a great thing we all experienced, and at the same time you had the fear that you're just never going to experience it again.
But Joe Montana still had some magic left.
Pass Montana, cocks his arm, looks right, no one there, looks left, throws in the end zone, touchdown!
There were a pair of playoff comebacks that lifted the Chiefs to their best season in 24 years.
Looks right, launches a pass, into the end zone, a backpedaling, leaping catch, touchdown! Hey! I don't believe what I just saw! Montana magic is back!
In 1994, Montana beat the 49ers, one of only 3 defeats San Francisco suffered all season.
The whole opportunity to be able to play again consistently was a joy, and I think that's what made things so much easier and smoother for the transition for me, was that people were able to see that I wasn't doing it for the money. I was doing it because I wanted to play the game and I wanted an opportunity to win.
36 seconds left in the game.
In some ways, Joe Montana's final comeback embodied his entire career.
Looking right, firing a pass, that a leaping grab, touchdown Montana Magic!
Joe Montana made it look simple, but in reality, nothing Joe Montana ever accomplished came all that easy. Joe and Jennifer were married in 1985, and today the couple lives with their 4 children outside San Francisco. A sense of family has always been important to Montana, both on and off the field. Now, with his retirement from the game, he can find refuge from the glare of the media spotlight and spend more time with the people who are most important to him.
I think it'll give us and him a little bit more time with the family to really get to know the kids, and it's perfect because they're really coming at an age where they need their dad around a lot more.
Are you ready?
You can be next.
For a big one?
Yeah. High one, higher.
So it's a new beginning, not having to worry. Number 1, is he going to get hurt? And number 2, is he going to win? And is he going to hang on to his job? All that is gone and out the window. And I think that he'll see that there's a lot more to life than the NFL.
When you come home, it doesn't matter what you've done or how bad you've played, or they don't care. They still want to kick you and punch you and jump on you and wrestle with you, and they want you to read and do those things. And it's the only form of reality that you really have. Someone said to us it's like Camp Montana around the house in a lot of cases, because we have a lot of the same interests with the kids and try to see what they like, but also try to keep them involved with things that we enjoy too, so that we can do it together.
She won. She beat me fair and square.
You beat me one and I beat you one.
We'll have a rubber match tomorrow.
Okay.
It must be the way he was raised and the attention that he got with his family, and it seems like that to him is probably the ultimate security and comfort zone. It's where he can be himself completely and nobody judges him.
I don't think there's anything better in this world is when you bring a child into it and you're able to take care of the child and do things with him. I think the greatest thing that could happen to you is your kid jumped up on your lap and say, I love you, you know, and it's like watching him with his kids now, and they climb up on him, and as you can see the difference in his face when they start talking to him, and they put their arms around him and hug him and say, Daddy, I love you, and it means a whole lot to everybody.
Everybody wants to be loved. Everybody wants somebody to love. And he just seems really strong about that, and he has no fear about hiding it.
Joe Montana has taken the plunge into his new life after football. But even before he got to enjoy time with his wife and children, Montana was a member of another special family.
He became part of my family. We shared laughter, we shared tears, and Joe was probably the first player that I became closest to like that as owner of the team. I would probably liken him to my firstborn.
Great shot. Great shot, guys.
The first son of San Francisco never put himself above any other member of the 49er family. Yet he couldn't help but become a team leader. Not through brashness or bravado, but rather by simply letting his play speak for itself, letting it elevate those around him.
Put about 6 or 7 yards on this thing.
Montana performed,
You watch that safety,
and the people on the sideline watching him perform were inspired by him.
He recognized it was a game. And he recognized that in order to play the game well, you had to enjoy it. And he recognized that not only did he have to enjoy it, but everyone around him, upon whom he relied, had to enjoy it as well. So he kept it loose.
Well, he's got funny legs for a quarterback, doesn't he?
Just that, but they're making fun of your knees.
Look at those legs.
Last time I saw legs like that, they were hanging out of a nest.
Even when the entire 49er family was rewarded with a trip to Hawaii, Joe Montana was just one of the guys.
34 years to get this development.
He'll always be a 49er. He is to San Francisco what a lot of the great landmarks are. The cable car and Trans-America Building and Golden Gate Bridge, and then there's Joe Montana.
I don't think you can go anywhere in San Francisco and not have someone talk about Joe Montana.
He made this city. When he came to town, he made winners out of us. What were the 49ers before Joe?
He did not have a sense of arrogance about him. He was a family man.
He had this charismatic quality to him.
He's somebody you want your kids to grow up to be like.
He's a hero in his own time.
And he was also pretty darn cute.
He had a spirit, like he didn't want to lose. He was the epitome of the underdog.
He was never down. You could always count on him coming through at the last moment.
He's the best 2-minute quarterback there ever was. Cool, collective, takes his time when he throws the ball.
The way he played, it was just magical to watch him.
I think the things that I used to like the most is when he got like really excited and he would like just jump up and down and run all over the field with his hands up in the air.
When he puts up his hands, that's like Joe Montana.
My favorite Montana moment by far is the catch.
That was the best thing I ever saw.
It was Super Bowl 16. He was number 16. I'm getting all choked up. They were the Cinderella team. It was just beautiful.
Joe Montana not only became a beloved icon in San Francisco, but also a worldwide celebrity. Joe Montana left the lasting imprint of a champion on the landscape of professional sports.
He came to play football, and he just came through in the end, and he won. And that's how he's going to come down. He's going to come down as the ultimate winner.
You know, one is only a winner. And, you know, I mean, no one's ever run around yelling, we're number 2, we're number 2. You know, I mean, it's just, we're number 1. And 4 times in his professional life, he was number 1. And I think that's the legacy.
In Super Bowl 16, Joe basically managed, directed, and moved the team. We depended on real consistency and efficiency with everyone else, but it was primarily Joe Montana's dramatic form of play that made the difference.
Montana was named the MVP of Super Bowl 16, and in only his second full season as a starter, he had established himself as one of the game's premier quarterbacks. But 3 years later, in Super Bowl 19, the Pre-game focus was on Montana's Miami counterpart, Dan Marino. That focus would shift dramatically as the game got underway.
Well, Joe was ready for that game. No matter how much you talk about team concepts, which is very important, it's also an individual battle.
Montana drops back, short drop, fakes once. He's going to run it himself. He's into the end zone. Touchdown, 49ers!
And so he knew he was in against a great quarterback in Marino. Marino had gotten all the attention. And so Joe was at his very best because of it.
Montana throwing, and it is caught by Monroe. He's down the 10 to the 5. He's into the end zone for a touchdown for the 49ers.
He was just on fire. He'd been there before. He was very calm with it. He had been in the offense 3 additional years, so he knew exactly where everyone was. We had more weapons in 19, and he was awesome. He's a big game player.
When Joe Montana came out on the field, there was the excitement. There are certain players that bring that, the anticipation. Mays was like that. You anticipated. You knew he was going to do something. What it was, you weren't sure, but it was going to be something that had an impact.
Perhaps his most dramatic Super Bowl impact came in Super Bowl 23.
Everybody knew that Joe was a winner. Joe, somehow he'd find a way to win. In fact, a little anecdote of that ball game, we scored. Jimmy Breach kicked a field goal with just a minute, it was a few minutes to go, 3 minutes to go or so. And Chris Collinsworth, a wide receiver for us from Florida, came over and gave me the old elbow and said, "Hey, Sam, I think we may have left too much time on the clock for number 16.
The 49ers have a long way to go.
We came into the huddle and I was like yelling and screaming, "Come on, let's go. Let's get it going. This is the biggest drive of my life. If we want the ring, we got to go out and get it." And he looked at me, and it was during one of those long TV timeouts they have in the Super Bowl, and he looked at me and goes, "Hey, H." You know, that's what he calls me, Harris, H. "Hey, H, check it out." I go, "What?" And he goes, "Hey, look over there in that end zone." And I look there, and he goes, "Hey, there's John Candy." And I go, "John Candy?" And sure enough, John Candy's sitting there eating some popcorn. And I look at him, and I look at the clock, and, you know, there's 3 minutes to go in the game, the biggest game of the year. And he's so relaxed that, and then all of a sudden the TV timeout ended, and next thing I know, we're marching down the field for the winning drive.
Montana back to throw on first down. Throws over the middle, completes it to Craig.
If I had somebody open right away and it wasn't my first receiver, I'm going to give it to him and let him gain 5, let him gain 10.
Montana again is back to throw. A little dunk over the middle.
Try to maintain that pressure on the defense.
2:35 remaining.
All the way to the other side of the field.
Sidelines, Price.
Get some movement in there. Get some movement. If you're worried about the scrambling running thing, that's good. But don't just two-gap. He'll peck us apart and get the field goal.
Joe back to throw. Steps up, throws. Out here for Rice. He has it. Midfield goes out of bounds at about the 46.
It got to a point where he had so much confidence, he knew he was going to do it. The players that were in the huddle knew that he was going to do it. The fans in the stands knew he was going to do it. And where it becomes the ultimate is when the other team knows he's going to do it.
We got 3 timeouts. This is deja vu.
Montana trying to drive from the length of the field here with the game in the balance. 16-13, the Bengals lead. Montana back to throw. Throws over the middle. A fine catch by Rice. Rice into the 20. He's down to the 19 for a first down for the 49ers. 40 seconds remaining. The 49ers will have to take a timeout here, and they do.
It's such a sight to watch this. It is, whether it happens now or not, to watch Joe Montana do this so many years, and to watch this absolute surgeon on the football field and one of the all-time greats do his thing again, it's almost like poetry.
And the 10-yard line, 39 seconds remaining. Montana at quarterback, in motion, comes right. Back to throw Montana. Steps up, throws. A 10-yard pass. The 49ers have scored with 34 seconds remaining. Montana to Taylor for 10 yards, but they went 92
quarterback and having that type of a game in that game itself. You dream of those days. There's no better way to do it than that.
For Super Bowl 24, Montana found a better way to top himself. And while he didn't have to make a last-minute comeback, he did make history. Montana earned Super Bowl MVP honors for an unprecedented third time. And the 49ers won their fourth world championship in dominating fashion.
Going into the Super Bowl, the last one, and probably one of his greatest games of using every component in the 49er offense.
Montana rolls to his right, throws to Brent Jones, great catch, he's into the end zone, touchdown 49ers!
Taking every component, whether it was the tight end, the running back, the wide receiver, and using each component to its fullest to really go out and destroy. He probably could have played that game with a blindfold on.
It was this unique, fully dimensional mind that Joe has to be able to do those things when other people would be struck by the drama and the pressure of a World Championship game. Joe was truly brilliant, became maybe the greatest football player of his time during that game. And of course, the rest is history.
Fueled by a competitive fire that made him the ultimate winner, Joe Montana's career is not only history, it is also legend.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
God damn you. Mom. Congratulations for everything.
Well, I think that they're going to remember him with his arms up in the air, signaling a touchdown after a last-second drive to win either a Super Bowl or a very important game. But I'll remember him back in 1979, a scrawny kid out of Notre Dame who came in and built the foundation for my franchise that has carried it through the 80s and into the 90s. And he'll always be that very important cornerstone that started the 49ers on a winning way.
The 49ers have won it.
In this day and age of searching for heroes, he will be a hero of the 80s and 90s.
The legacy that Joe Montana leaves the NFL for all young players, and I hope even my children, is never quit. You never give up.
You know, there's a lot of people that play the game, but there's not a lot of people that know how to play the game. Joe Montana knew how to play the game. At some point, you have to say, I mean, you have to think that someone is the best that ever played, and if you really think that, you got to say it. You got to throw the disclaimers away. Joe Montana is the greatest quarterback that ever played the game.
Money. Carolina's head coach says they are